Well, right. I hope the word file is also visible too. And in this class, we are going to discuss about the sociological approach to history writing. See, we are studying the different approaches to history writing. Like we have studied Marxism, we have studied positivism in the last semester. We have studied these two, positivism, Marxism, and then in this semester also we have studied about the Orientalist, imperialist, nationalist, the encyclical approach to history writing. And this is a sociological history writing. It was a kind of change that came the way we look at history. Earlier, mostly the history written, it was of political nature. And now over a period of time, people begin to realize that only understanding the politics is not history, because writing political history is relatively easy. You get a lot of resources related to political history, but that will not give you a very comprehensive picture of the past, and that is the reason people have gradually shifted to other dimensions of history. Like under the influence of Marx, economic history became more prominent. We have studied subaltern already. Under subaltern influence, the history of the deprived class became more important. And in the sociological history writing approach, sociological approach to history, uh, the study of society became more important. However, let me make it clear that if the sociological history comes, that does not mean that political history has stopped altogether. But thing is that political history, a lot of things were written already on the political history, and making it as a kind of framework, people started exploring different dimension. History, like Seeley, as I told you, political history was given a lot of importance. Seeley has given important definition. History is yesterday's politics. Whatever happens in the politics, he said that is the only history. But gradually, over a period of time, especially in the 19th century, a lot of changes started coming in the history writing. And there are early attempts to write history from the sociological perspective instead of studying the life of the kings and queens and politics. People started exploring the sociology that, and there is a person called Ali Halvi who wrote the English People in the early 19th century. Then there was J.L. Barber and Barbara Hammond who wrote Village Laborer in early 20th century, 1911. J.D.S. Cole wrote Common People. Then William Roberts, History of Emperor Charles. And J.M. Trevelyan's book is very important because he wrote the English social history. And here he selects the description of the society instead of the political event. So it covers a very long period, 16th to 19th century. And Trevelyan was a professor of history at Cambridge. And here he described the life of the people, family, tradition, religious thought, life values. And, he described the social history as something, history of the people which politics left out. And this has created a lot of storm because people believe that political history is the most important thing. The next important thing that has brought the sociological approach to history writing into prominence is industrial revolution. You know, Industrial revolution has affected many dimensions of human life. Like there was mass migration, women started coming out of the house and started working in factories. Urbanization had started, and this industrial revolution had and subsequent urbanization and the problem of the labor. It definitely impacted Karl Marx thinking, and it definitely also impacted the other dimensions of history, including the sociological history writing. Mm. And in fact, sociology, anything that is having a social, anything that is having logy, it indicates that it is a scientific study. And it is, in fact, Auguste Comte in 1838, he was the person who first time used the term sociology. And he proposed that human life, human society can be studied in a scientific manner. And that is how he brought history and society together. Then Herbert Spencer, he wrote a couple of books from 1820 to 1903, and he made a significant contribution to sociological history writing, like Principle of Sociology, Philosophy of Social Darwinism. But though sociological history as a term became popular in 19th century, it is not that the earlier historians were not at all doing it. ऐसी कोई बात नहीं कि पहले के हिस्टोरियन ने कभी ये सब काम नहीं किया था. Mm, is there anybody from Hindi medium? Seems to be none. Okay. Hindi medium, if Hindi medium students are joining, they can write. Well, now, it is not that the sociological history was not at all being done. In fact, 14th century Arab historian Ibn Khaldun, about whom we have studied in the last semester, he does make the study of society. If you remember that how one group of people comes and settle down in the plain area and becomes lethargic, and how the other people who are more sturdy, they come from the very desert area and replaces them. So it is a kind of study of society, and it is a scientific investigation, so it is a sociology as well. Well, and the people who has brought done more intensive work to bring history and sociology together is Emil Durkheim and Max Weber. Before that, of course, Karl Marx has done some work, and E.H. Carr in his book What is History also says that the borderline between history and sociology should vanish. Now, what are the subject matter that will be that are generally dealt in the sociological history? So here in the sociological history, we study geographical setting in which society is based, ecology of the region, racial component of the society, social characteristics and interrelation of such groups in the society, the study of lifestyle of the group, economic activity of the society, interrelation between agriculture and industry, the study of power equation in the society, what are the power centers at the different level, how are these power centers kept control over the society, study of gender relation, the prevalent religious idea, religious groups, and their impact on social life, study rural and urban development, development of social values, development of fine arts, literature, and means of entertainment, how human being had led a settled life of the nomadic stage. Is society homogeneous, or does it comprise of different groups? What type of relations these different groups are having? What keeps them separate? What is the lifestyle, way of living, custom, culture of different groups of people? What are the moral values of society? How far the institution of marriage is effective? How the man-woman relationships are governed? What is the status of women, religious ideas, belief, lot many things are there, social stratification, difference between rural and urban people, how the social changes took place, and what are the effect of social rules, what are the social rules, and what will really happen if you break the social rule. All these things are being studied under sociological history, and the resources that is used are generally historical documents in the archive, archaeological remains, reports on agriculture, industry, folklore. All those things are generally used for the study of sociology or sociological history. Well, so Emil Durkheim, he is the only sociologist we have in our syllabus, and we will discuss about him now. 1858 to 1917 is his period. He was Jew and he was living in France, French philosopher, uh, known as father of modern sociology. And it was in fact Emil Durkheim who made sociology as a very important branch of study. And he devoted his whole life in founding professional sociology in France. Under his influence, sociology departments were established in the universities, and the societies studying sociology came into existence. He trained students, and he in the initial phase of his life, he was trained in religion, but somehow he developed a kind of dislike for religion, and he wrote with the purpose of establishing sociology as an independent discipline. He was also influenced by the positivist thought. If you remember positivism, we have studied already in the last semester, where everything that is to be written in history should be supported by the evidences. Well, under his initiative, in Bordeaux University, a sociological study has started in 1894, that is in France, and he took also initiative in starting a journal called Annales Sociologiques. That is French, French name. Translation is Annals of Social History. That means Annals of Sociology. Sorry. So where people started writing their articles in sociology, and one section of it was dedicated to the study of religion. So by doing this work, Emil Durkheim, he managed to get institutionalized support to a study of sociology, and he created generation of sociologists. The important sociologists like Henry Barr, Max Bloch, they were all affected by his writing. Max Bloch, we have, I think, already studied. Yes, we have already studied in the last semester. Max Bloch was uh, which kind of annals historian? Yeah, well, so this Max Bloch was influenced by Emil Durkheim. And Emil Durkheim wrote the book. The titles are The Division of Labor in Society, that came in 1893, The Rules of Sociological Methods, Suicide, and The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, which came in 1912. The Division of Labor in Society, in this book, the main focus of this book is to understand the social structure, to understand the social changes, why the social changes happen, outcome of the social changes, what were the results of social changes, and how social changes brings new problem as well. And in this he explored the social contact, and he said that in the society there is a division of labor, and this division of labor, it suits individual as well as it suits society. For example, if like in our society we have a division of labor. What does that mean? I teach, and but I don't produce everything that is required by me. For example, this t-shirt is not produced by me, neither I produce this computer, neither this specs is produced by me. But if I start doing everything that is required by me, probably my productivity will be very less. So it benefits that I do the work of the teaching that is required for society, and somebody else will prepare a t-shirt for me, somebody else will prepare computer for me, somebody else will prepare mouse for me, or somebody else will print books for me or make table for me. So what happens is this division of labor, it helps everybody. Society progresses and individual also progresses, because then I can be specialized. If I have to make t-shirt and if I have to make computer also, that won't be possible. I will not be able to devote time for studies, and my knowledge level will be very less. I can't be a good teacher. You can be good at everything that you do. All right, so you have to be a specific. So that he explores here. Then he also makes comparative analysis of present and ancient time, and he makes a comparison between the simple society and complex society. Simple society is a society in the village, in the tribal setup generally, where division of labor is very simple. They don't have a lot of specialization. For example, generally we will see that the society which is based on tribalism, or which is based on hunting, young people will go for hunting, and the old people, they will stay at home to protect the home. Women will cook and look after the house, and they will collect the fodder. So you see the division of labor is it's very simple here. Most of the young man in the tribe will go for hunting. But in the modern world, in the complex society, there is a complication in the division of labor. Uh, and in this, because of these complexities, the society has become very complex. For example, if you stay in a village, probably there will be one doctor, and that doctor will treat everything from head to foot. If you have a headache, he will give medicine. If your leg is injured, he will give you medicine. But in case of complex society like city, you have a specialization for everything. There will be dentist to treat your teeth. There will be somebody else specialized who will treat your heart, cardiologist. There will be specialists who will treat your eyes, and there will be orthopedic who will treat your, if something happens to your bone structure, something happens to your leg. So this transport society is being gradually transferred from simple to complex society, and this simple to complex society transformation has brought a lot of changes in the relationship of the individual. In the earlier, like for example, just imagine the simple society in village where there everybody knows everybody. If I need to take clothes, I know the merchant. Merchant knows me. If I need to buy shoes for me, cobbler knows me. But here in the complex society, we need to take help or support from the people with whom we don't really know. I really don't know who has made this computer. It has came to me through the vendor. I purchased it. All right, I don't know who has made this t-shirt. I got it through Amazon. So in a complex society, we have increasing specialization, and at the same time, we are dealing with the people with whom we don't have any face-to-face contact. The house, who made this house that I am using, I am not sure. It was made years ago. Who has made the classroom, I am not sure about it. So in the complex society, first thing is that There will be specialization of the work, and we have to depend on large number of people with whom we don't have any contact, plumber, tailors, and people really don't know each other. Many of your parents also may not be knowing who is teaching you historiography or who is teaching you which paper, because it is a complexities. We have to take the help of those people with whom we are not in contact anymore, or not in contact at all. And so it is because of these complexities of the complex society in the urban area that we need to have large number of rules and regulation. In villages, generally you will not find any police station because the crime rate is very low. Everybody knows everybody, and the people they keep a watch over each other. Village society are having a kind of control over everybody, but that is not possible in cities. City is a huge place where people don't know each other, and if you don't know each other, if you have possibility of escaping, then there is a possibility of crime as well. So in order to avoid that crime, the complex society will be generally having large number of rules and regulations. We need to have governing authority. We need to have a police system. We need to have judiciary. We need to have municipal offices so that the water can be given or the taxes can be imposed, so on and so forth. Now, when the society moves from this simple to complex system, there is also something called pathological state. What is the meaning of pathological state? The judiciary or the universities or the police station, or these are institutions, and all these institutions have came into existence for the service of the society, and the people are employed there and they are paid from the society. Somebody pays taxes, and out of those taxes these people are paid. But many times the people who are supposed to be responsible to serve the society, instead of serving the society, they think about their own interests. For example, a teacher is paid by the taxes paid by the parents. But if a teacher is selfish, doesn't understand his responsibility towards his students, probably he will not take the classes, or he will not take the classes properly. And that will harm the purpose of the university itself, or harm the purpose of the college and schools itself. Similarly, government doctor is not supposed to take the bribe, or the police is not supposed to take the bribe. But this happens many times. Police and judiciary and the government officials, they are already paid by the taxes of the people, but in addition to that, they take bribe. So that defeats the purpose of those institutions, and that is the reason Emil Durkheim calls it as a pathological state, where people don't understand their responsibility, and the society like India, where people don't understand their responsibility, they misuse their own power, they misuse their office to gather wealth. That kind of state is called pathological state. But it progresses. For example, Western countries are generally believed to be less corrupt, for the simple reason that people there, they understand their sense of responsibility, that if I am a teacher in university, and if I don't teach children, my students, to the best of my capability, some of my student will become school teacher and teach my child. And if I am not training my student properly, how that my student will train my child, so things will come back to me. This has been understood by the people in the advanced society, and in the advanced society, that is the reason you will find that people are more professional competency, or they have more professional integrity, which generally lack in the third world country. And you understood this concept of pathological state. See, simple society, complex society, and when the society moves from simple to complex, then there is a pathological state where people who are employed to serve the society, they don't understand their responsibility. They misuse their office, they misuse their position for their own benefit. Then he defines crime. Crime is something which hurts the collective consciousness of the society. You are not supposed to steal. That is ingrained in the collective consciousness. You are not supposed to murder somebody. But if you murder, then that becomes a crime. But the action can be crime at one place. It may not be crime at another place. For example, killing somebody in Nagpur is a crime definitely. But if an Indian soldier kills somebody, let us say terrorist, on the border, or the terrorist who is going to bomb somebody, or the police kills a terrorist, then that cannot become a crime. In the case of the war, if the soldier kills the enemy soldier of the enemy country, then that doesn't become a crime. So crime is also having its own. It is called crime in the particular situation and the particular context. Well, so this is what he describes in his book, this first book, that is The Division of Labor in the Society. So you must understand what is complex society, what is simple society, what is pathological state. Well, now let us go to the next book, Rules of Sociological Method. And here he tries to establish sociology as an independent science. And Durkheim, Comte's influence is, quite obvious on the writing of Durkheim. And here the very important contribution of this book is that there is an organic analogy. Organic means what? The limbs of the living beings are connected together. For example, we are a body, complete body, and we are having our head, eyes, and limbs and heart, and all these organs, they function properly because they work in alliance with each other. For example, I cannot say that the work of the brain is not important and it is only the heart that keeps the body alive, or vice versa. Brain is the most important, but heart is not required. If brain doesn't get blood, probably the person will die. And in order to understand the complete functioning of this human body or the complete functioning of any animal, we need to study his organ or its organ in relation to each other. And that is how we can understand the society. We need to treat the society as an organic whole. We just can't study the one segment of society and ignore other. For example, we just can't study the caste structure and ignore the position of the women. They are integrated. They are interrelated. We just can't study the division of resources and ignore the caste structure in India. These things are interconnected. We can't just study the economic function and the educational level. Economic status and the educational level, they are interrelated. Usually we find that highly qualified people, they are having better economic status. All right. So we need to treat uh, the whole society as an organic body. The organs and limbs are interconnected and they function in relation to each other. So family, religion, and state machinery, they all are related to each other. They are the institution of the society. Mm. Well, here he also talks about the idealism. Idealism means there are certain ideas which may not be based on the fact, but those ideas are having a lot of influence on the society. For example, we say that sun rises and sun sets. Actually, sun doesn't rise and sun doesn't set. It is because of the rotation of the earth we feel like that. Sun is stable relative to the earth. But for centuries together, we have believed on that idea and we continue to believe on the same idea. All right. So the purpose of this book, the sociological method, is to establish sociology as an independent discipline, to establish specific domain which can be studied by sociology, giving legitimacy to organic analogy. Organic analogy I have already explained. Possibility of specific scientific knowledge in society. Now, in this book, he also discusses about what is social facts. And social facts are way of thinking and acting and believing. And there are there are some important characteristics of social facts, not only four, there are many characteristics. Well, first thing is they are external to individual. What does that mean? That means they are given to us. When we are being brought up, we are being conditioned to believe into certain social facts. For example, the way boy dress up and the way girl dress up is different. Why it is different? Very simple thing is that social fact is being told to us in childhood, that if you are a girl you should dress up like that, if you are a boy you should dress up like that, if you are a boy you should take up that career, if you are a girl you should take that career, and also you should be learning to cook. So cooking may not be naturally liking for that girl, and it is quite possible that the boy may have a natural liking for a cooking, but he will not be encouraged to learn the cooking, and that girl will be, even if she doesn't like, she will be encouraged to learn the cooking, because then everybody in the house will tell that what will happen to you for after your marriage. You need to learn the cooking so that you can cook for your husband and the husband's family. All right. So she will learn the fact that it being a girl, it is her duty to learn the cooking. So this is facts is has not came from within her, but is given to her. For example, there is a specific way that professors in the university should be dressing up. For example, you will be very shocked if you see your teacher, Dr. Khangai, wearing a very tight-fitting red T-shirt and tight-fitting jeans, and standing near Pantela and smoking, because that kind of behavior is not expected from a teacher in university. So my behavior is conditioned by the external facts, because I had been seeing the professors not behaving in that particular manner, wearing tight fitting colored t-shirts or smoking openly in the public places. All right, so that fact has came to me, even though I don't smoke, but even though I had an inclination to smoke, I will ensure that I'm not smoking at the public place. Well, these social facts are coercive. Coercive means you are under pressure to follow this social fact. If a girl is not willing to learn cooking, she will come under pressure a lot from the society, from her family. If a professor is having an inclination to smoke or wear red fitting t-shirt, probably there will be a lot of pressure on him from his social circle, that this is not a proper behavior for a professor to live. Let us take the case of example of marriage. In case of India, still live-in relationships are not generally accepted. If you are coming from the small town or village, definitely you cannot think about it, even if you feel like doing it. But they are generally accepted in the ways. So the man and woman in India, generally speaking, can stay together only after getting married. If they are staying together without marriage, there will be a lot of social pressure. Why are you doing this from parents, and probably they will not get house on rent, so on and so forth. All these kind of complications are bound to come. So they are coercive. There will be a lot of pressure. They are general. They are for everyone in the social setup. Generally speaking, in the social setup, this kind of social facts are for everybody. Every girl is expected to behave in a particular way. Every boy is expected to behave in a particular way. If a boy doesn't want to have his career, and he will say, fine, let my wife go for work, I will stay in the house and I will take care of the house. Generally, that won't be accepted. He will become a laughing stock, and his parents will, and the society, they all will pressurize him. So it is generally for everybody. They are opaque. Opaque means something that is not transparent. So something you can't see beyond that. It will cloud your vision. A girl has to learn cooking, that means she has to learn cooking. There is no argument. We generally accept it. Of course, nowadays everybody question that, and you should be. Society should not never remain static. But it is opaque. For example, I can't just wear a red fitting t-shirt and go and smoke in the public place. Being a teacher in the university, my logic, nobody will going to accept that social fact is given to me, and I accept it as a part of behavior. I can't see beyond that, and they are external to individual. This is already given to you. Well, I think there is they are coercive. This is also a little bit repetition. And these are the silent rule. They are silent so long we follow it. And the moment we break it, they become very vocal. For example, just take the case of live-in relationship. So long you get married and stay with your husband or wife, nobody will, say anything about it. They say, that is accepted. He is okay, fine man or fine lady. But the moment you break it and start staying together without getting married, there will be hue and cry. People will just, your family member and all these people, they will just brand you kind of, very bad character, and they will cut off all relationship with you. So the moment you break the social rule, they become very vocal. Otherwise, they generally remain very silent. The socially accepted rule may not be accepted at one place, but could be accepted at other place. For example, killing of enemy by soldier. Killing is not accepted generally, but at the border, that could be praised, even not only accepted, that could be even praised. Just a minute. If we do this correction here. So external to individual, they are coercive. This is done. They are general for everyone. Coercive is any deviation is punished. Well, here in this case, like, the coercive rule means any deviation is punished. For example, in a village and all, there used to be system of boycott, जात से बाहर निकाल देते थे, कास्ट से बाहर निकाल देते थे, ठीक है ना, क्योंकि कास्ट में एक्सेप्टेड सोशल रूल आपको फॉलो करने हैं. सो दीज आर द जनरल कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ द सोशल फैक्ट्स. Now, Emil Durkheim's next book is Suicide, 1897. And generally, before this book, people believed that suicide is a psychological fact. People are having peculiar psychology and they commit suicide. But here, by studying the Catholic and Protestant society, Emil Durkheim have proved that suicide is not only psychological, it is a sociological fact. Society creates a situation in which particular individual feels that he is not suitable to live in the society, and that prompts him to commit suicide. So here, he categorizes suicide into the different category. He says egoistic suicide. Egoistic suicide means a person is not able to integrate well in the group, and he feels that his life is worthless. His life is not worth living, as society doesn't accept him. And that is the reason he commits suicide. For example, we see that some of the children, they commit suicide if they don't rise to the expectation of their parents. For example, if they don't get admission into the good college, or they don't go get admission into the medical or engineering, and they commit suicide, this is called egoistic suicide, because that person, he had internalized, and that has become a part of his ego. Ego means your personality, that to be a good child, to be a fit in the society, I need to get into the IIT. And if I don't get into IIT, that means my life is not worth living. So it's because of that kind of thinking that person commits suicide. So is it a psychological or it is a sociological? It is both. Psychologically, he is not able to resist the pressure. But then society has pressurized him. Society has created a situation where this boy or this girl feels that her life or his life is not worth living. Then there is an altruistic kind of suicide. Altruistic kind of suicide is something, when you know that you are going to die, but you are not, you are so much under the influence of your sense of duty. For example, there is an example that Emil Durkheim gives. A captain of the ship is not supposed to leave the ship, and it was considered as a matter of honor to die with the ship. If your ship is drowning in the sea, the captain will not leave that ship, but he will die with that ship. It's because of the altruistic. You are influenced by some very altruistic, some very high noble ideas, and you identify yourself with the ship. And the Indian border, many times, soldiers, many times they don't turn back, even if they know that the enemy is going to kill them. They don't leave their posts because they are highly influenced by the idea of sacrificing their life for their own motherland. That is called altruistic suicide. Then anomic is, the people, sometimes people, they don't have any moral standard, and then they begin to feel, they begin to feel that nobody likes them, that sort of thing. So, the moral standard that is imposed by the society, created by the society, and if a person continues to break away from that moral standard, he also sometimes, end up committing suicide. Well, now, the next book of Durkheim is Elementary Forms of Religious Life. And in this book, Durkheim describes his theory of religion. And here, he makes an analysis of human mind, in what form human mind has imagined the religion. People's religious belief, they are generally reflective of their social concern. Religion, according to Durkheim, plays a very important role in uniting society, and religion does have a social context. So while thinking about God, human being also thinks about a society. And here, Durkheim is quite critical about the anthropological and Marxist approach to religion, because anthropological approach, they generally try to go to the origin of the religion, and Marxists, they generally treat religion as a kind of opium. They don't give any importance to religion and say that religion had been used by the people in authority to exploit the people. Emil Durkheim, he disagrees with both this thing, anthropological approach and Marxist approach. He says that religion, it helps in the growth of the society. It is interlinked with the different aspects of society, and the religion belief is also different in the simple and complex society. In the simple society, the religious belief were different. Generally, religions are used to explain the phenomena that human being did not understand, like how the rain came and how the death happens. That kind of engagement will be there in the primitive society. And it is a traditional society. We generally believe that God creates one's destiny, but modern society believes that it is a scientific use and hard work that can change your destiny. Durkheim believed that religion have its social function. It brings the people together. It creates solidarity. It creates the sense of what is moral and immoral, and that regulates the society. The rituals and festival in religion are having importance because people feel rejuvenated. People feel energized when they participate in the festivals. And in the modern day, the nature of religion has changed. Earlier, people believed on something else. For example, in the modern day nation state, the flag and worshipping of your nation, that itself can become a religion. For example, the Indian flag, by itself, it is a piece of cloth, and anybody who is not an Indian may not be having any sentimental attachment for that person, for that flag. But in case of India, for the Indian people and Indian soldier, that flag is like his religion, and to uphold that flag, people are even giving up their life. We are not allowed to, not only we are not allowed by the law, emotionally also, most of the Indians, I suppose, will not do anything that will be anyway insult our national flag. So, that flag and the ceremony and the sentiment surrounding to that flag which represent our nation has become a kind of new religion, which brings the people together, which brings the solidarity, which creates an emotional attachment with each other, that we are the people who respect the same flag because we all are Indian. All right. So it has become a kind of new religion. It unites and energizes the people. So that is the reason we have new festival celebration. That is, Independence Day. People celebrate. They go very happy, and generally we find there is a very happy atmosphere all around. For the small kid, it is a school day, which will be a kind of religion. A person who is not in that school, for him that school day is not important. It is not a religion. But for that kid who is having an attachment with his school or with her school, the school day is a kind of new religion. So Durkheim, he also says that religion is having a functional role. It also makes it possible for the people to come to the terms with the chaotic situation of life. For example, there is a lot of uncertainty in human life. For example, if the calculation had been very simple, like you work hard and you get the result, probably there would have been no religion or no God. But then it doesn't always happen. People work very hard. Sometimes they don't get successful, and then they just say that probably it is a God's will. So the God, according to Durkheim, the concept of God and religion, it came into the human life because of life is chaotic. Life is not very straightforward. It is not just a simple mathematical calculation. If it had been so, probably there would have been no God. And what is sacred? Sacred is to be believed. There is no rational explanation. For example, the flag, Indian flag, we believe that it represents India. For an outsider who is not an Indian, we just can't explain the sentiments we feel for it. We can, there is no rational belief. And same thing is with the religion. We believe in God. We feel good when you go to temple or mosque, and we can't give any rational explanation for that. It is just a matter to be believed, and that is what he explained. Uh, and in case of pathological society, religion gets fragmented into the different sects. There will be infighting. Instead of bringing the people together, religion will become a matter of division in the society. And that is the indication that the society is going through the pathological state. And there is a little bit of difference between social history and sociological history. Social history is something which just talks about the fact of the society. Sociological history is make an analysis of the fact. For example, if you are given assignment that you need to collect the data of the Nagpur city, that the house as a property is on whose name, husband or wife. So you just go around and you collect the data of, let us say, around 25 lakh people. And you find out that out of this 25 lakh people, 20 lakh houses are on the name of the husband, and so it's only 5 lakh houses which are on the name of the wife. Now, this fact is a social fact. But if you make an analysis why the property is generally on the name of the husband and not on the name of the wife, then that becomes a sociological. So sociological and social history, the little bit of difference is that sociological is a more scientific approach. It prompts you to make an analysis of the social facts, why the caste system survives. If you go into the depth of it, it is a sociological fact. Sociological is, it involves scientific study, critical, analytical society over a very long period of time, and it prompts us to draw certain basic conclusion, like Indian society or the society in general all over the world are gender biased. That is the reason we have property on the name of the men generally. Even though there is a law, generally in father's property, in ancestors' property, the boy is given more share and the girl is given less share. So, if you try to understand the scientific reason behind patriarchal biasness and all that, that becomes a sociological history. So here our this topic also ends. We have studied that in the 19th century, sociological history has become more important. It tries to study society instead of studying only politics. Emil Durkheim is a person who has done a lot of work, and he has, written number of books. So division of labor here, if he describes simple, complex, and pathological society. Then he describes what is the social facts, what are the different characteristics of the social facts. Then in his book, A Rule of Sociological Method, he describes about the organic analogy of organic analogy of society. Then in suicide, he categorizes the different kind of suicide. In religion, he says religion does have its social context. Every religion is born in the social context. It does have its importance for the society. Well, that is where we end here our lecture. So thank you so much. If you are having any doubt, you can ask me.